looking through our work that we've done so far, and we've done a first draft, and we've been looking at all the things we need to remember to include. So, on this board are some of the presentation things. So, I need to stop saying so. Finger spaces. Yes. Capital letters and full stops. We talked about handwriting. So we've got it on here. Presentation. Handwriting. Small is not always good. It needs to be neat. It needs to be clear. And I need to be able to see each individual letter. It's really hard to tell if you spell a word right or wrong if your handwriting is really, really small. Capital letter for your proper nouns. And that's just say letter formation, not litter formation. My letter formation wasn't very good because it looks like litter, doesn't it? Letter formation. And capital letters for proper nouns. There are a lot of proper nouns. You've got all the countries, you've got the city names, you've got Churchill, you've got Hitler, you've got Britain. All of those must have a capital letter. Blitz always has a capital letter because it's its name, isn't it? So we looked at presentation, which is what we just talked about. We're using we or our or they, which is kind of a bit of a throwback to when we did persuasion, when we did use we and you, because we were trying to get the reader in. This is, think about when you've read non-chronological reports, this is much more you stepping back. You are just giving the information. So it's not about you or about country. This could be anyone in the world reading this, couldn't it? Not necessarily a British person. So when you say our, who does our mean? So I've put we question mark. Who do you mean we? That we needs to be changed by we thought either the British, people of Great Britain, the Germans, Hitler. You need to use proper terminology. And you need to be writing the third person all the time. And I've written up here, impersonal, not personal, impersonal. Okay, it's not about you. And then this one we talked about, facts, not opinion. Some said we don't care what you think. We don't really, do we? Not in a horrible way, but we want the information. It's not persuasion, it's not propaganda, it's not anything like that. It's just giving across the information. And really, you want people to be able to make up their own mind about it. Obviously, we are very much writing from our point of view, the British point of view. We talked about last week, didn't we, that actually if you were writing this, if you're American, you perhaps wouldn't even talk about the Blitz, because really that had no effect on America, as far as I'm aware, or very little, if anything. It was much more concentrated on Britain. And the reason we learn about it, because it has impacted our lives, it's our history, isn't it? That's why we're writing about it. If you look at the American side of the war, they actually didn't come in till later, and lots of these things didn't happen to them, so they wouldn't be writing about this, so they would have a different perspective. And also if you were German, you'd perhaps have a different perspective on it. That make sense? So although you're writing from the British perspective, you're still not giving your own opinion on it, which is why we then talked about subjunctive, didn't we? If you use subjunctive, it's a bit like it's giving your opinion, because it's that if I were, if he were to. So you can try and use subjunctive, but be really, really careful that you're not just putting it in there for the sake of putting it in there. Okay, not everything goes in everything because it doesn't fit. Remember we looked at the 4 sentence types? Most of your sentence types are going to be statements, aren't they? Because you're giving information. We talked possibly about getting a rhetorical question in there, but it needs to fit. It needs to keep the formality of the piece. Commands. Go with your imperative verbs, so you possibly will get some commands in there. It depends. Needs to fit. There's no point what we call shoehorning sentences in just to say I've got those sentences in. They need to fit naturally. But modal verb and imperative verbs are one of those ones we talked about, weren't we, at the beginning. I'm not sure you get many imperative in, but you will probably get modal in for sure. And modal are, should, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Another one of my songs. Should, would, could, aren't they? Will, might. Show possibility. Right, what else? Passive voice. You should be, you will, or even you should. My modal verb, you will get in passive, okay? Think about when we did passive sentences. We actually did ones relating to World War II. And we did ones about Britain being bombed by German planes. By zombies. Yes? Easy one to get in, can't you? Even in your introduction. The Blitz was when Britain was bombed continuously by Germany, or by Hitler's army, or by Hitler's air force, or by the Luftwaffe. That's passive. In there. Easy. Got it. You can get it more than once though, because everyone does so. Vocabulary. We did some work on PWP words. Now, because it's not emotional, because it's not personal, you're not going to get many of those emotions in, but you can definitely use some of the other vocabulary. Dilapidated, things like that, didn't we? Desolate, desolation, devastation, wasn't it? Generalizers, most, many, a vast majority, some. Prepositions, show position. You can get them in. You'll get them in naturally. But think about those key stage 2 ones we looked at yesterday. So we did them on Friday. Children at home do them Monday. Beyond, during. Remember, during's a preposition, isn't it? Okay. So think of those more sophisticated ones. Facts, not opinion. Bullet points. I would possibly save your bullet points for your fact box. Okay, that is when they're going to naturally fit. You might be able to get them on your paragraphs. Don't overuse them. Don't forget, sometimes when you use bullet points, you could be using a colon and a semicolon for a list. Remember, if you're using a semicolon, the things between each thing in the list should be more of a phrase than one word. So you wouldn't put the cities that hit the bomb were, colon, Swansea, Cardiff, with a semicolon between each. They would just have a comma. But you might put items you would need to, items families kept in their antigen shelters were, colon, blankets to keep warm, semicolon, food to last a few days, semicolon, toys and games to keep busy, semicolon. Can you see it's a phrase, not just a single word? Parentheses, really good. You'll get your relative, we didn't write on here, did we? Relative pronouns often come with your parentheses, don't they? Remember those ones beginning with W? So, the Blitz was named after the German word Blitzkrieg, which means lightning war, in brackets, and the which gives you a relative clause. Interesting varied sentence starters. We talked about not repeating words. We found out we said bombs, bombing and bombers a lot, didn't we? So, you need to think of synonyms. Yeah, words that mean the same or similar. You need to think of synonyms. And that's a very year 5, 6 thing to do. So not just words like bombs and bombing, but even other words sort of about the destruction and stuff. Try and use synonyms. Don't just keep repeating the same word over and over. And that's the same with sentence starters. I mean, we don't use and then, like we perhaps did once when we were little. And then we went, and then we went, and then we went. We use various sentences, but make sure they make sense. We just had a chat about one, didn't we, that didn't quite make your sentence make sense at the beginning. Oh, we're nearly there. Yes. Conjunctions. White bus. What type of conjunctions are white bus? Subordinating. And fanboys are coordinating. Okay, should be a selection of those, not always because. Okay, not always and. Try and mix them up a bit more. This bit isn't filled in at the moment because we're just doing the outside for now at school, but you've got it filled in at home. Okay, so loads of things to be going on with. Off you go.